All right, welcome back to today's chapter 8. Now we're going to start getting into some of the fun. All right, I hope everyone did fine on the exam. There were a couple tricky parts. So make sure that if you didn't get the answer or the score you want, when you're done, research it and understand why, so that, and all of the trick questions, like I said, were there for a reason. They weren't there to trick you. They were there to educate you on what the exam's going to do, because they are going to trick you. All right? So today we're going to talk about on the real estate brokerage itself. We're going to talk about all the economics and how you run a brokerage. We're going to talk about treating it like a business and making sure you understand that a real estate brokerage is a business that is run like any other business. We're going to talk about antitrust laws, because a business has to adhere to all of the antitrust stuff that's in there. Talk about the laws and ethical standards on how you use technology. That has become a very big thing in this industry. I will tell you right now, we are almost a vertical climb on our technology in this business. I remember we used to mail the listings to the brokerage, and we had a 3-ring binder, and we had to punch holes in the MLS sheet, and we put it in the 3-ring binder, and they would send us a list of all the properties that had closed, and you would go through and take those out, so that when a client would come in, they would look at your listing book, and they would literally go through and go, okay, I want to look at this one and that one. Now with technology, then we went to this thing called Stellar View, which was DOS-based. You guys remember the old you had to dial up and do all that. Now we've got the internet, where basically we have let the genie out of the bottle with technology for us. We really don't control real estate much anymore. It's all on the internet. Now we have become marketing people. So you have to understand that. All right, let's talk about brokerage and license law. All 50 states, including the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, have a license law. Each state governs their own license law, and it varies from state to state to state. All right? So like Indiana license law just recently went through a big change. Used to be it was a 54-hour class. In 2014, they decided to up the standards a little and made it a 90-hour class, which is what you guys are taking right now. Some states, like I think Montana, is like 12 hours. Well, there's only 12 people that live in Montana, so you don't really, it's different. New York, 120 hours. So each state dictates, as part of their license law, what it is. Ohio has a 30-hour continuing ed. Indiana has 12 hours every year. Theirs is 30 hours for every 3 years. So that is all dictated at the state level. However, the overarching purpose of license law that serves for 4 purposes. All right? There in your book on page 116, you can see that license law establishes the requirements for obtaining a license. This is what I was just telling you. Indiana upped theirs to 90. So they say in order to get a license, you must go to class, 90 hours. And then the school said that 90 hours has to be so many hours of this, so many hours of this, so many hours of this. And we all had to turn in our curriculum and get it all approved with the state so that it lined up with Indiana's license law. License law also defines the activities that require a license. In Indiana, buy, sell, trade, lease, exchange, manage, list, rent, consult, or refer requires a license. Now for us, we've mentioned once before, I told you, it's the same license. You can do all of those with the same license. Property manage, 1031 exchanges, lease commercial, sell residential, all of that. Nevada, for example, has a different license law. You get your broker's license, then if you want to manage property, you have to go back to school and get a property manager's add-on to your broker's license to manage property. Here, you pass the exam, you can manage property next day because it's one of our, what Indiana says is good enough for us. Ironically, we looked at opening a brokerage in Nevada. The Modular Group did. That was so I could go to Vegas and write it off, mainly. Is what I wanted. And I called them and started going through the requirements of their license law, and she said, you realize we don't recognize your license? I'm like, mine? She's like, yeah. You would have to go to school. I said, oh, okay, well, I own the school and I teach the license. And she's like, well, we still don't recognize that. You're still going to have to go to school. So even though I own the school and the director teach the licensing, they didn't recognize my license. I would have had to go to Nevada and go through their whole school and start all over with them. So, could I have done it online? I don't know, because we looked into this before online was actually, a thing. Probably should look into it again. That way I can. Business expense, $2,300 at the craps table. Write that off. Do what? Do I go beyond Indiana? We are currently in the process of dealing with Ohio and Kentucky right now for their continuing ed. All right? Because we have, that's a good question. We actually just opened a Richmond school. There's a real university now in Richmond. And we're dealing with Ohio because they get a lot of people that come across that deal in Indiana, so they want their Indiana CE. Same thing with Jeffersonville. A lot of people come across the river from Louisville, right? So we're dealing with those two states so that we can get approved in there. The third thing that they do is they describe the acceptable standards on how you treat other licensed people. So there is a set prescribed method on how I deal with you once you get your license. There are certain rules that we have to abide by. All right? For instance, one of the most notable ones is I'm not allowed to talk to your client. You have a client, I can't talk to them about real estate. Because that way I can't go, oh, well, I know Jonathan's doing you, but I can beat Jonathan's price, call me. Yeah, that's exactly what it's designed for, is so that you can't cut out your brother in the deal, or your sister in that thing. And then the fourth one is, how do they enforce these standards and the penalties for violating any of the license law? All right? So that's the whole purpose. How do you get a license? What can you do with your license? How do you treat other people with your license? And what are they going to do to you if you violate any of these laws? That's the main purpose for license law, those four topics. That is going to dictate how we run your brokerage. Now, I told you every state has their own. We have the Indiana Real Estate Commission. We're going to talk in depth about the commission when we get to the state laws, why they were created, how they were created, and things like that. They are the one, is a governing party of, 12 people on the commission. Is that right? 9 plus 2 plus 1. Yeah, 12 people on the commission, and we'll talk about how they're created and why. All right? Any questions about that, what the license law's purpose is? Cool. So a brokerage is simply a business that is designed to bring together buyers and sellers of real estate. Remember what a broker was. A broker works in a brokerage. But simply a brokerage is nothing more than a regular business, just like, say, Walmart. I, as the managing broker for my brokerage, still have to abide by business laws, meaning I've got business entity reports I have to file with the state. I've got employees I have to write the W-2 for. I've got 1099 contractors. I have to abide by the Sherman antitrust laws. So my business is just like any other business in the world. It's just that my business deals with real estate. Okay? So Walmart and the modular group have very little difference. Maybe a couple zeros at the end of their income, but other than that, we run exactly the same. My brokerage, or a brokerage better, can run the gamut just like any other business. We can be an independent or we can be a franchise. You know, they've got Remaxes and Century 21s and Keller Williams out there. That would be a franchise. We could be one office or multiple offices. I've got 5 offices. We used to have one office, all right? It can be a sole proprietor. It can be a corporation. It can be a partnership. So just like any other business in the world, the real estate brokerage can take the form of every other business there is. It just depends on how I want to set it up. I was a franchise for a number of years. We owned a Century 21 in the early 2000s for about 6 or 7 years. They were okay. I liked some of the stuff. Didn't like some of the stuff. As an independent, I get to make more decisions. Obviously, I lose some of the national branding that Century 21 brought to the table. But in the real estate world, branding in Ohio really did me absolutely no good as an Indiana broker. So, I mean, you can look at the ups and downs and stuff like that. A brokerage is a business where we bring together buyers and sellers and we lease, buy, sell, and we do it all we deal with investors. We do a lot of 1031 exchanges. We do a lot of residential sales. We do some commercial sales. We do property management. We do all of that. All right? Any questions on how this works? First day after a test, you guys still sleeping? All right, let's move.